Jake Corrigan was having what scientists would technically classify as a garbage fire of a day. And not just any garbage fire. The kind where the garbage is also radioactive and possibly sentient. His cargo hauler, the Rusty Penny, had blown its secondary cooling manifold 3 hours into what should have been a simple run to the outer colonies. Now she was docked at Station Kepler 442, hemorrhaging credits faster than Jake could say extended warranty fraud. The repair estimate made his eye twitch. The mechanic, a blob-like Galuvian with 17 tentacles and a serious attitude problem, had actually laughed when Jake asked about a payment plan. So here he was, drowning his financial sorrows at the nebula's edge, which held the distinguished honor of being the worst bar in this sector of space, possibly all sectors. The floor was sticky with substances Jake didn't want to identify. The air smelled like burnt rubber and regret. The music, if you could call it that, sounded like someone was torturing a synthesizer. Perfect. Jake hunched over the bar, nursing something that was legally labeled as whiskey, but tasted like paint thinner mixed with bad decisions. The bartender, Pluribus, was a jittery creature with 6 eyes on stalks that swiveled independently, making him look perpetually paranoid, which, given his clientele, was probably smart. "Rough cycle, human?" Pluribus asked, his translator giving him a voice like a nervous accountant. "You could say that." Jake took another sip and grimaced. "You could also say I'm one blown manifold away from selling organs on the black market." "Which organs?" Pluribus leaned in with what might have been curiosity or concern. "Because depending on which ones, I know a guy." "I'm joking, Pluribus." "Oh, right. Human humor. Very confusing." That was the thing about being human in the galactic community. Humanity had only joined the cosmic neighborhood about 15 years ago, which in galactic terms made them toddlers. Adorable, slightly sticky toddlers that nobody took seriously. Sure, Earth had managed to reverse engineer some alien tech and build their own jump drives, but that just meant they were now the galaxy's newest cargo monkeys and cheap labor. Most aliens looked at humans the way you'd look at a golden retriever that somehow learned to drive. Impressive, sort of, but you wouldn't trust it with anything important. Jake was fine with that. He didn't need respect, he needed credits, and maybe a new cooling manifold that didn't cost 3 months' salary. He was contemplating switching to cheaper drinks when it happened. Jake stood up from his bar stool, turned around, and walked directly into what felt like a scaly wall. A very angry, very large, scaly wall. "Apologies," Jake muttered, stepping back. "Didn't see you there." Then he looked up, and realized his day was about to get significantly worse. The scaly wall had a name, and that name was apparently Krathul, the Merciless. Jake knew this because the alien announced it immediately, in a voice that sounded like gravel being processed through a wood chipper. "I am Krathul the Merciless, champion of the Vargothian war clans, victor of the blood rings of Sartok Prime." He loomed over Jake like a particularly aggressive skyscraper. "And you, soft thing, have touched me without permission." "Yeah, that's my bad," Jake said, trying to step around him. "Won't happen again." Krathul was 7 feet of pure nightmare fuel. 4 arms, each thick with corded muscle. Scales that looked like they could deflect small arms fire. Eyes that glowed a dull red, like someone had stuck dying embers in his skull. He wore minimal armor, probably because his hide was already tougher than most people's ships. Vargothians were the galaxy's premier mercenaries, warriors, and generally terrible party guests. They lived for combat, died for honor, and really enjoyed making examples of people who disrespected them. One of Krathul's 4 hands grabbed Jake's shoulder. The other 3 moved to various weapons on his belt. "In my culture, unwanted physical contact is a challenge," Krathul continued, squeezing just hard enough to make Jake's shoulder scream. "A challenge that must be answered in blood." The bar had gone completely silent. Even the tortured synthesizer music had stopped. Every alien in the establishment was suddenly very interested in their drinks, their datacrons, or the fascinating patterns on the ceiling. Nobody wanted to be a witness to what was about to happen. Pluribus's 6 eyes went wide. All of them. Simultaneously. "Oh no. Oh no 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 no. Please, honored warrior. The human meant no offense. Humans are clumsy. Primitive nervous systems. Very poor spatial awareness." "Hey," Jake protested weakly. "Silence, Pluribus," Krathul growled. "The mammal has insulted me. I will educate him on the consequences of such actions." Jake felt his stomach drop somewhere into his boots. This was how he was going to die. Not in a blaze of glory, not even in a particularly interesting way. He was going to get pulverized in a dive bar because he bumped into the galaxy's angriest lizard man while slightly drunk. His mother was going to be so disappointed. Not surprised. but definitely disappointed. Look, Krathul, right? Listen, I really don't want any trouble, Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady. I'm just a cargo hauler. I don't even have combat insurance. Then you should not have challenged a warrior. Krathul released Jake's shoulder and stepped back, giving himself room. His upper right hand moved to a weapon on his hip. Let me show you why the galaxy fears the Vargothians. Around the bar, aliens were pulling out recording devices. Some were even taking bets. Jake caught fragments of conversation. How long do you think the human lasts? 30 seconds, maybe. I'm saying 20. Look at him. He's practically made of water and hope. 10 credits says Krathul doesn't even need his blade. Fantastic. Jake was about to become viral content across the station. His obituary would probably get a lot of views. Plurbus was frantically tapping at a datapad behind the bar, probably updating his insurance policy or writing an incident report. Maybe both. Krathul's hand closed around the hilt of his weapon and pulled it free, with a dramatic flourish that suggested he'd practiced this move in front of a mirror. The energy blade hummed to life, glowing a vicious orange that cast shadows across his scales. This blade, Krathul announced to the room, because apparently, this was a performance now, has ended 47 warriors in honorable combat. It has carved through battle armor, starship hulls, and the pride of champions across 6 systems. Jake stared at the weapon, then at Krathul, then at the bottle of questionable whiskey still sitting on the bar behind him. And he made a decision that was either incredibly brave or catastrophically stupid, probably the second one. Jake grabbed the whiskey bottle off the bar, lifted it high, and smashed it against the edge of the counter. Glass exploded in a shower of fragments, leaving him holding the jagged neck like the world's saddest medieval weapon. The bar went even more silent, which Jake hadn't thought was possible. Krathul stopped mid-speech, his glowing energy blade still humming menacingly. His red eyes blinked once, twice. All 4 of his hands seemed confused about what they should be doing. Did the human just? Someone whispered from the back. Is that glass? Another alien muttered. That's glass, confirmed a third. He brought glass to an energy blade fight. Plurbus made a sound like a dying air compressor. Human Jake, what are you doing? Honestly, Plurbus, I have no idea. Jake held the broken bottle in front of him, trying to look threatening despite the fact that he was shaking and probably looked like a terrified raccoon. But I'm committed now. Krathul tilted, his massive head, scales catching the bar's dim lighting. You think that primitive shard will save you, mammal? Probably not, Jake admitted. But here's the thing about humans. Krathul the Merciless. We're really, really stupid. Like, aggressively stupid. Our ancestors looked at wolves, giant murder dogs with teeth like knives, and said, I'm gonna make that my friend. We looked at the ocean, which is full of things that want to eat us, and said, I'm gonna sail across that in a wooden box. We found peanuts that could literally kill us and said, but they taste good though. He gestured with the broken bottle, very aware that he was now giving a TED talk while holding a bar weapon against a professional killer. So yeah, you've got your fancy glowing sword that cost more than my ship, and I've got a broken bottle that cost 4 credits. But the beautiful thing about being human? We don't know when to quit. We didn't get to the top of Earth's food chain by being reasonable. We got there by being too dumb to realize we should be dead. Jake squared his shoulders, despite every intelligent part of his brain screaming at him to run. Your turn, lizard boy. The bar exploded into chaos. Half the aliens scrambled for better viewing angles. The other half dove for cover. Someone knocked over a table. Someone else started a betting pool specifically on whether Jake would survive the next 10 seconds. Did he just call Krathul lizard boy? An alien gasped. The human has a death wish. Another agreed. No, this is better than the pay-per-view fights on Kepler Prime. A third creature chittered excitedly, all 3 of its heads focused on the scene. Krathul's eyes blazed brighter. His scales seemed to ripple with barely contained rage. You dare. I very much dare, Jake interrupted, because if he was going to die, he might as well commit to the bit. You wanted a fight? Fine, but don't get mad when I don't follow your fancy warrior code rules. Humans don't have a warrior code. We have spite and improvisation. It's gotten us this far. For a long moment, Krathul just stared at him. Jake could see the alien's brain trying to process what was happening. This wasn't how challenges worked in Vargothian culture. The opponent was supposed to be scared, respectful, or at least armed with something that made sense. They were not supposed to break bar equipment and deliver speeches about stupidity. You are either the bravest human I have ever met, Krathul said slowly, his energy blade humming louder, or the most foolish creature in the galaxy. Can it be both? Jake asked, gripping his bottle tighter. Krathul's mouth split into what might have been a smile, revealing multiple rows of teeth that Jake really didn't want to think about. Very well, human. You want to fight with broken glass and audacity? The Vargothian dropped into a combat stance that looked like it came from a dozen wars' worth of experience. Then let me show you what happens to those who challenge Krathul the Merciless with toys. Plurbus ducked behind the bar. I'm not liable for this, he squeaked. None of this is my fault. I have signs. Jake took a deep breath, looked at his broken bottle, looked at the 7-foot murder lizard with an energy weapon, and thought about every poor decision that had led him to this exact moment. Then Krathul lunged, and Jake did what humans do best. He stopped thinking and started moving. Krathul moved like liquid death, his energy blade cutting through the air with a sound like tearing reality. The strike was precise, economical, designed to bisect Jake somewhere between his chest and his regrets. Jake threw himself sideways with all the grace of a drunk penguin. The energy blade missed him by approximately 3 inches and carved a glowing line through the bar's support column instead. Molten metal dripped onto the floor. The whole structure groaned ominously. Stop moving, Krathul, snarled, which seemed like terrible tactical advice to give your opponent. Hard pass! Jake scrambled behind a table, upending it as a shield. It was made of some kind of pressed composite that probably wouldn't stop an energy blade for more than half a second, but half a second was better than nothing. The blade came down and went through the table like it was made of tissue paper. Jake was already rolling away, because staying still was how you got perforated. He came up next to a chair and did what any reasonable person would do. He threw it, not at Krathul's head. That would be stupid. The alien would just deflect it or slice it in half for style points. No, Jake threw it at his legs. At his knees, specifically. All 4 of them, because apparently, the universe thought 2 legs weren't enough for some species. The chair hit Krathul's lower left leg with a solid crack. It didn't hurt him. The alien probably had bones like titanium. But it did surprise him, and surprise bought Jake another 2 seconds of not being dead. You fight without honor, Krathul roared, kicking the chair away with one massive foot. I fight without getting stabbed. Jake shot back, circling around the bar. Big difference. He grabbed another bottle, this one half full of something blue and probably flammable, and hurled it at the Vargothian's face. Krathul's upper right hand came up and caught it mid-air, crushing the bottle in his grip. Blue liquid splattered across his scales. The alien looked at his wet hand, then at Jake, with an expression of pure disbelief. Are you just throwing things at me? It's called a strategy. Jake was now behind the bar with Plurbus, who had wedged himself into a cabinet and was making high-pitched noises of distress. Plurbus, do you have anything back here that's useful? Useful for what? For not dying. I have 17 types of alcohol, 3 cleaning solutions, and a protein synthesizer that's broken. Alcohols. Flammable, right? Human Jake. No. But Jake had already grabbed 3 bottles of something labeled in a language he couldn't read, smashed them on the floor between him and Krathul, and grabbed what looked like an electronic igniter used for fancy cocktails. Krathul vaulted over the bar with terrifying ease, all 4 arms spread like he was going to grab Jake and fold him into interesting shapes. Jake hit the igniter. The alcohol caught with a whoosh that singed Jake's eyebrows and sent a wall of blue flame between them. It wasn't much. It wasn't going to stop a Vargothian warrior, but it made Krathul hesitate for exactly 1 second. Jake used that second to run. He dove through the flames, because apparently his survival instinct had completely given up and was just along for the ride at this point. He hit the floor on the other side, rolled, and came up near the back of the bar where some structural support pipes ran along the wall. Krathul came through the flames like they were a mild inconvenience. His scales were scorched but intact. He looked even angrier than before, which Jake wouldn't have thought possible. Stand still and die with some dignity, the alien bellowed. Dignity's overrated. Jake grabbed one of the support pipes, a piece of exposed conduit about 4 feet long, and yanked it free from its mounting with a screech of protesting metal. Sparks showered down, the lights flickered. Now he had a metal pipe in one hand and a broken bottle in the other. He looked like the universe's worst-equipped knight. Krathul laughed. Actually laughed. It was a deep, rumbling sound that made Jake's bones vibrate. You think that will save you? No, but this might. Jake swung the pipe not at Krathul, but at the ceiling light directly above the alien's head. The fixture exploded in a shower of sparks and glass. Krathul flinched. His eyes adapted for different lighting, momentarily disoriented. Jake didn't hesitate. He lunged forward, aiming low, because going high against someone 7 feet tall was suicide. He drove his shoulder into Krathul's midsection, right where 2 of his legs met his torso, where the joints had to flex. It was like tackling a tank, a very angry, scaly tank. But tanks had physics working against them too. Krathul stumbled backward, more from surprise than actual force. His energy blade carved a wild arc through the air, missing Jake but destroying a holographic jukebox that had been minding its own business. The entire bar was screaming now, not in fear, in excitement. The human's still alive. He set the bar on fire. He's tackling him, with his body. I told you humans were insane. Jake scrambled away, breathing hard. His shoulder felt like he'd rammed it into a concrete wall, because he basically had. Krathul was already recovering, shaking his massive head and refocusing those glowing red eyes. You are more irritating than I expected, the Vargothian admitted, circling Jake with renewed focus. But irritation ends now. He came at Jake with all four arms, a whirlwind of claws and blade and murderous intent. No more playing around, no more speeches, just pure, efficient violence. Jake did the only thing he could think of. He grabbed a serving tray off a nearby table, used it to deflect one clawed hand, ducked under the blade, kicked a chair into Krathul's path, and then did something that surprised even himself. He jabbed the broken bottle at Krathul's face. Not to cut him. The scales would stop that, but to make him flinch, to make him react like something was coming at his eyes. Krathul jerked his head back. Instinct, biology, even apex predators protected their eyes. And in that half-second of reaction, Jake brought the metal pipe down on the wrist of the hand holding the energy blade. The hit connected with a crack. The energy blade tumbled from Krathul's grip, spinning through the air, and embedded itself in the far wall where it continued to hum. Menacingly. The bar went absolutely silent. Krathul stared at his empty hand, then at Jake, then back at his hand. Jake stood there, panting, holding a broken bottle and a dented pipe, covered in sweat and questionable bar substances, realizing what he'd just done. Did you just... Krathul started. I think I did, Jake wheezed. And then Krathul smiled. Really smiled. Not a threatening smile. Something else entirely. You disarmed me. Technically, I dehanded you, since you have 4 of them. No warrior has disarmed me in 17 cycles. Is that good or bad for me? The alien's 3 remaining free hands clenched into fists. It means, Krathul said, we fight properly now. No weapons, just skill. Jake looked at his broken bottle and pipe, then dropped them both. Oh good, because this was going so well for me already. Krathul cracked his knuckles, all 16 of them. It sounded like a string of firecrackers going off. Now we fight as true warriors, the Vargothian announced, dropping into a stance that looked like it had been refined over centuries of combat training. Hand to hand, strength against strength, let us see what humans are truly made of. Jake looked down at his own hands, soft, unarmored, designed for holding coffee cups and filling out cargo manifests, not for punching aliens who could probably headbutt a starship and win. Right, Jake said, trying to buy time while his brain scrambled for literally any plan. Hand to hand, that's fair. It was not fair. It was the opposite of fair. It was like asking a goldfish to fight a shark in the shark's home ocean on the shark's birthday. Krathul moved first, closing the distance in 2 massive strides. His upper right fist came at Jake's head like a meteor with bad intentions. Jake dropped. Not in any fancy martial arts way. He just let gravity take him, falling flat to the floor as the fist whooshed overhead, with enough force to dent the metal wall panel behind where his head had just been. From the floor, Jake did the only thing that made sense. He grabbed Krathul's ankle and yanked, hard. It didn't move the Vargothian. The alien was too massive, too well balanced, but what it did do was make Krathul look down, momentarily distracted. Which meant he wasn't looking when Jake grabbed a handful of the spilled alcohol and broken glass from earlier and flung it directly at those glowing red eyes. RG. Krathul recoiled, one hand instinctively going to his face. You threw glass at my ease? You wanted hand-to-hand combat. Jake scrambled to his feet, already moving. You didn't specify no pocket sand rules. That's not sand, that's glass and alcohol. Details. The bar crowd was losing their collective minds. Aliens were cheering, booing, chanting, and frantically updating their bets. Someone had started a live stream. Jake was pretty sure he could hear money changing hands in at least 4 different currencies. Krathul wiped his eyes with his upper left hand, blinking furiously. His vision was clearing, and he looked absolutely livid. You are the most dishonorable opponent I have ever faced. Thank you, Jake said, because he was choosing to take that as a compliment. He grabbed a serving platter from a nearby table and held it like the world's worst shield. Krathul came at him again, this time using all 4 arms in a coordinated assault that would have impressed a drum corps. Jake blocked what he could with the platter, dodged what he couldn't, and took a glancing blow to his ribs that knocked the wind out of him and definitely cracked something. He stumbled backward, gasping. This wasn't working. Krathul was too strong, too fast, too much. Jake was running on adrenaline and poor life choices, and both were running out. Think, Jake. Think like a human. Humans didn't win by being stronger. They won by being creative, by turning everything into a tool, by refusing to play by the rules because the rules were designed by people who weren't desperate enough. Jake's eyes scanned the bar. Broken furniture, spilled drinks, the still-burning alcohol fire that was probably a health code violation. Exposed wiring from where he'd pulled down the pipe. The structural damage from Krathul's energy blade. Everything is a weapon. His gaze locked on the exposed wiring, sparking and spitting electricity near the wet floor where all that alcohol had spilled. The alcohol that was mostly water-based, which meant it was conductive. Oh, this was either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. Definitely the second one. But Jake was committed. Hey, Krathul. Jake backed toward the puddle, making sure he was on the rubber floor mat behind the bar. You know what humans are really good at? Dying. Krathul advanced, all 4 arms ready. Nope, engineering accidents. Jake grabbed the sparking wire with both hands, gritted his teeth against the shock that made his arms spasm, and thrust it directly into the puddle of alcohol and water between him and the Vargothian. The puddle lit up like a taser's wet dream. Electricity arced across the conductive liquid in brilliant blue-white branches of pure voltage. Krathul, who was standing directly in the puddle with all 4 feet, suddenly became a very large, very surprised lightning rod. The alien's scales might have been tough enough to stop blades and bullets, but they were also metal-based, conductive. The electricity found every gap in his armor, every vulnerable joint, and introduced itself enthusiastically. Krathul's roar was part pain, part shock, and part what the hell is happening. His muscles spasmed, his 4 arms jerked in different directions. Smoke rose from where his feet made contact with the electrified puddle. Jake dropped the wire before his own rubber mat's protection gave out, and watched as the Vargothian warrior, champion of the blood rings, victor of countless battles, toppled backward like a very angry, very electrocuted tree. Crash. Krathul hit the floor with enough force to crack tiles. He didn't move. Well, he twitched a little, but that was just residual electricity. The bar was dead silent. Then someone in the back whispered, "Did the human just?" He electrocuted him. Another alien confirmed, sounding awed. He weaponized the bar. Is that legal? Who cares? Did you see that? Jake stood there, panting, his hands still tingling from the electrical current, staring at the fallen Vargothian warrior. His brain was having trouble processing what just happened. He'd won. He'd actually won, against Krathul the Merciless. With a broken bottle, a pipe, pocket sand, and an OSHA violation, Plurbus slowly emerged from his cabinet, all 6 eyes wide. Human Jake, you're alive. Yeah, Jake wheezed. I'm as surprised as you are. On the floor, Krathul groaned, still conscious, but definitely reconsidering his life choices. The bar erupted into absolute chaos. The bar exploded into the kind of chaos usually reserved for major sporting events or religious experiences. Aliens of every species, size, and questionable hygiene standard were on their feet, appendages waving, making sounds that ranged from cheering to what might have been their version of laughter. The human won. I lost 50 credits. I made 200. Someone call a medic. Someone call a reporter. Someone call my lawyer. I need to update my will because I just saw a human take down a Vargothian. Jake leaned against the bar, trying to remember how breathing worked. Every part of his body hurt. His ribs were definitely cracked. His shoulder felt like it had been used as a battering ram, which it had. His hands were still tingling from grabbing live electrical wiring, which was probably not great for his long-term neurological health. But he was alive. And Krathul the Merciless was currently flat on his back, smoking slightly, staring at the ceiling with an expression of profound confusion. Plurbus scuttled over to Jake, all 6 eyes rotating independently to survey the damage to his establishment. The bar looked like a small war had happened, which, technically, it had. There were scorch marks, broken furniture, exposed wiring, a still-burning alcohol fire that someone should probably deal with, and various fluids that Jake didn't want to identify soaking into what was left of the floor. Human Jake, Plurbus said slowly, his translator crackling with emotion. You just defeated Krathul the Merciless in single combat. I feel like defeated is a strong word, Jake wheezed. I'd say I more. He survived aggressively? You electrocuted him with my bar. In my defense, he started it. Also, you should really get that wiring looked at. Major safety hazard. On the floor, Krathul finally sat up, scales still smoking. Two of his hands went to his head, and he groaned like someone who'd just discovered migraines. What happened? You got tased, my dude, Jake said helpfully. Courtesy of Earth's finest electrical engineering and my complete lack of self-preservation. The Vargothian blinked his red eyes, trying to focus. He looked at Jake, then at the destroyed bar, then at the crowd of aliens who were all recording this moment for posterity. Then back at Jake. You used electricity, and broken glass, and fire, and a chair, and improvisation. Yeah. Jake slid down to sit on the floor, because standing was becoming negotiable. That's kind of our thing. Humans, I mean. We don't really do the whole honorable single combat thing. We do the use literally everything available to not die thing. It's gotten us pretty far. Krathul was silent for a long moment. His forearms slowly moved through what looked like a self-diagnostic, checking for damage. Finding plenty, but nothing permanent. Then, to Jake's absolute shock, the Vargothian started laughing. It was a deep, rumbling sound that made the floor vibrate. It grew louder, more genuine, until Krathul was full-on belly laughing with all four hands clutching his midsection. You, he wheezed between laughs, pointing at Jake with one clawed finger, are absolutely insane. Yeah, I'm getting that a lot today. I have fought warriors across 17 systems. I have faced champions, soldiers, mercenaries, and assassins. I have dueled with honor in the blood rings of Sartok Prime. Krathul shook his massive head, still chuckling. And I was just defeated by a cargo hauler with a broken bottle and no respect for conventional warfare. To be fair, conventional warfare was trying to kill me. Krathul pushed himself to his feet, swaying slightly. The crowd took a collective step back, unsure if the fight was about to resume. But the Vargothian simply walked over to where his energy blade was still embedded in the wall, pulled it free, and deactivated it with a hum. Then he walked back to Jake and extended his upper right hand. Jake stared at it. Is this... Are you going to crush my hand? It is a gesture of respect, human. You fought well, dishonorably, chaotically, with absolutely no regard for tradition or proper combat protocols. The alien's eyes gleamed. It was the most entertaining fight I have had in cycles. Hesitantly, Jake reached up and grasped the offered hand. Krathul pulled him to his feet with enough force to make Jake's ribs scream in protest. You have earned something rare. Jake Corrigan, Krathul announced loudly enough for the entire bar to hear. The respect of Krathul the Merciless. Let it be known across the stations. Humans may be weak, soft, and lacking in natural armor, but they are dangerous in ways we never anticipated. The crowd erupted again. Aliens were frantically typing on their datapads, updating databases, sending messages across the network. Jake could practically see the information spreading through the station's networks in real time. Human defeats Vargothian warrior in bar fight. New. Species alert. Humans more dangerous than expected. Breaking. Earth mammals weaponize everything. More at 11. Plurbus was staring at the wreckage of his bar with an expression that might have been horror or calculation. Probably both. My insurance premiums are going to be astronomical. Actually, a crystalline alien from one of the tables called out, already recording everything. I'm a content aggregator for the Galactic News Network. This footage is going to get millions of views. Plurbus, your bar just became famous. You're going to have people coming from 3 sectors away to see where the human fought Krathul. Plurbus's eyes swiveled to focus on the alien, then on his destroyed bar, then on Jake, then back to his bar. Famous, he repeated slowly. Very famous, another patron confirmed. This is the best entertainment we've had since the Zentari juggling incident, and that resulted in a diplomatic crisis. Jake could see the mental calculations happening behind Plurbus's eyes. The bartender's whole demeanor shifted. Human Jake, he said carefully. How would you feel about free drinks? For life? And maybe telling this story to customers? I feel like I definitely need a drink, Jake admitted. Several drinks, medical-grade drinks. I'll get you the good whiskey. The actual Earth whiskey I keep in the back for special occasions. Plurbus was already moving, newly energized. And a medkit. And maybe a structural engineer. Krathul clapped Jake on the shoulder with enough force to nearly knock him over again. I must report this to my clan brothers. They will not believe that I was bested by a human using bar equipment as weapons. I will need to provide the video evidence. You're not mad? Mad? The Vargothian laughed again. Human, you showed me something I have not seen in many cycles. True innovation, adaptation, the willingness to win by any means necessary. He leaned in, his glowing eyes serious. That is not weakness. That is a different kind of strength, a terrifying kind. He straightened up, all four arms crossing over his chest in what might have been a salute. I would be honored to fight beside you someday, Jake Corrigan, when I am not the target of your creativity. Let's maybe not make this a regular thing, Jake suggested. Agreed. My nervous system requires recovery time. Krathul turned to address the bar. Let it be known, any who wish to challenge this human must first defeat ME in honorable combat. Jake Corrigan is under the protection of Krathul the Merciless. The crowd murmured appreciatively. That was apparently a big deal. Jake just wanted to sit down and process the fact that he'd somehow gone from broke cargo hauler to galaxy-famous bar fighter with a Vargothian bodyguard in the span of 20 minutes. Plurbus returned with a bottle that actually had an Earth label on it and a medical kit that looked reasonably legitimate. Here. On the house. Forever. Jake took the bottle, popped it open with shaking hands, and took a long drink. It burned going down, but it was real whiskey, and after the day he'd had, it tasted like victory. Around him, aliens were already embellishing the story. He caught fragments of conversation that bore only passing resemblance to what had actually happened. The human caught the energy blade with his bare hands. He set the entire bar on fire as a distraction. I heard he threatened to weaponize the oxygen. Humans can apparently turn anything into a place. Weapon. Anything. Even abstract concepts, probably. Jake looked at Krathul, who was nursing his own drink and looking remarkably cheerful for someone who'd just been electrocuted. This is going to follow me everywhere, isn't it? Across the galaxy, most likely. The Vargothian confirmed. By next cycle, every station will know about the human who defeated a Vargothian warrior with improvised weapons and electrical violations. Great, just great. Jake took another drink. I just wanted to fix my ship and deliver cargo. And now you are a legend. Krathul raised his glass. To humans. May we never underestimate them again. Around the bar, glasses raised. To humans. Jake clinked his bottle against Krathul's glass, wincing at the pain in his ribs. To humans, and to really, really bad decisions that somehow work out. His datapad buzzed. He pulled it out and saw messages flooding in. Job offers, interview requests. Someone wanted to buy the rights to his story. Another person wanted him for security work. A third wanted him to endorse their brand of energy drinks with the slogan, "Fuel your inner human." And right at the top, a message from the Galuvian mechanic. Saw the video, repairs on the house. Please don't electrocute me. Jake stared at the screen, then started laughing. The kind of exhausted, slightly hysterical laughter that came from surviving something you definitely shouldn't have. Plurbus leaned over the bar. Human Jake? Are you okay? I have no idea, Jake admitted, still laughing. I think I just accidentally became the galaxy's most terrifying species because I didn't want to pay for repairs. That's very human of you, Krathul observed approvingly. And somehow, impossibly, Jake had to agree. Across the station, updates were being made to the Galactic database. Species. Human threat level. Revised from negligible to situational nightmare notes. Do not engage in enclosed spaces with improvised weapon potential. Species shows remarkable creativity and zero-quit reflex. Approach with caution. Or better yet, just be nice to them. In the nebula's edge, Jake Corrigan took another drink, felt his cracked ribs protest, and decided that maybe, just maybe, being humanity's accidental ambassador wasn't the worst thing that could have happened today, though he was definitely going to need better health insurance.